Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hey, Pete. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. How are you today?
I am great, Ethan. How are you?
All good, all good. This is a long overdue review of the movie Operation Fortune, or I think they're pronouncing it Fortune.
Ruse de guerre, or whatever.
Ruse de guerre.
Operation Fortune is the keywords here.
It is. This is Guy Ritchie, who we love. Jason
Love him.
Statham, Aubrey Plaza, Hugh Grant. Sounds like a blockbuster to me. Josh Hartnett.
It 100% has all the ingredients for a very successful action comedy, you know?
Yes. In the Guy Ritchie tradition, so many kind of niche films, right, that really like captivate you, right? The same kind of cast, the same type of setting, that we thought this would be extraordinarily popular in London, given that Guy Ritchie is kind of synonymous with London cinema, right? And it's been in Dubai. It's still in Dubai. I bet it's been playing for 2 months in Dubai.
Right.
And that made me think it was like a major blockbuster. Like 2 months is kind of like Black Panther or Avatar. Like that's a long time to be in a cinema, right? And I went, there was, sometimes I exaggerate when I say no one. There was literally no one. Nobody. Just your friendly host.
So I think Operation Fortune really was hit by a couple of, let's say, stumbling blocks or roadblocks that really hurt it.
Let's talk about those.
First of all, I think this was one of the last movies, or maybe not the last, but definitely one of the few movies that got hit by the pandemic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in terms of when it was filmed. And I'm being very speculative. I actually don't know exactly when it was filmed, but I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. And the second and maybe most important thing, in fact, not second, the most important thing, is that the bad guys in this movie, or one of the bad guys in this movie, are actually Ukrainian.
Oh, yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing on its own, but the problem was the movie was supposed to come out almost exactly 1 year ago. And just as that happened, we had the outset of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the understanding was made with Guy Ritchie and with the studio that, listen, you have two options. I was under the impression that they were going to edit the movie to change the bad guys from being Ukrainian to like just some generic bad guys.
Yeah.
But the copy of the movie I saw wasn't changed. So
same.
I think what they did was they held on to it for the year so that it was less insensitive to have like the clear defined villains of the movie be Ukrainian.
All right. Quick tangent, my friend.
Yeah.
In the year 2023, are we not past the idea of singling out any specific country as the genesis of the bad guys? Case in point, Maverick, which I think brilliantly talked about next generation jets and showed a geography that could be one of many different places, draw your own conclusions. But I thought elegantly sidestepped the clumsy dialogue of, oh my gosh, the insert blank of nationality are coming, right? Are we really not past this? Whether it's Ukrainians, Russians, American, British, French, anyone, are we really not past that?
I'll tell you what the problem is with that. And I agree with you. This is a dual-sided coin thing. But on one hand, because that was also one of the comments I had while I was in the cinema with Top Gun, was I liked that it was a nameless, faceless, and literally faceless because everyone was wearing a flight helmet, right?
Right.
You don't pin someone like that down because it avoids a lot of controversy.
Yeah, it's not nice.
So in that way, I appreciate that.
Right.
But on the other hand, I would also argue that when you have it be generic, And when you have the bad guy be a generic country or hail from this generic country that you don't know about, it takes a little bit away from that sense of realism as well. Because ultimately, that last sequence in Top Gun Maverick, if you didn't know that they were attacking a foreign nation, it felt like Tom Cruise was attacking Vermont or Montana. It looked exactly like that, right? It was snow-capped mountains with fir trees, a beautiful river. It could have been in Vermont. And then all of a sudden, you have to ask the audience is going to ask.
Well, if it's Paramount movie, then definitely they're in Yellowstone, right?
Why are we at war with Montana?
Right.
Why is the U.S. Navy at war with Montana? You get my point?
They're attacking the Dutton Ranch. It's a Paramount universe.
And if you look at Top Gun specifically, it's not like they didn't have controversy. He's got a flag of Taiwan on his flight jacket, and that caused massive problems with China. And they refused to release the movie in China because of that. So it's not like that they're willing to skirt around. It's not like they don't want to skirt around controversy anyways.
I mean, but in this movie, what did saying, the Ukrainians are here, we got to get away from, what did that add to the plot?
Nothing.
Right?
I agree with you on that regard as well. So that's the other side of the coin, is that it doesn't add anything either, except for potentially a little bit of A, flavor, and B, for a movie like this and for a genre like this, it gives you more of a sense of worldwide international espionage appeal, because they can say, hey, like one of the not nice things, but one of like the fun things in seeing a movie, like in the James Bond movies, for example, was seeing the location cards, right? Now he's in Japan. Now he's in England. Now he's in Brazil. Now he's here. In this movie, they did the same, right? Like they were in Monaco, then they were in Morocco, then they were in Turkey, then they were in California. It gives it a little bit of context.
It gives it the context, but don't you also feel like there is multiple locations for the benefit of the audience, but then sometimes there's just like gratuitous locations. And I felt in this movie, one of the problems was, and I think we're diving into the plot, it just all seems so random. Wait, we're going to Spain? Why are we going to Spain? Wait, we're going to Los Angeles? Why Los Angeles?
Yeah.
And it just seemed like there were these random like pop-up things, and they had to go to Turkey, and then they had to go to Morocco, and then but it just didn't seem to there didn't seem to be like any cohesiveness between them, right?
You're absolutely right, but I think that's also one of the tropes of this genre, of the spy genre. The trope is they're always in far off exotic locales. And when you think of exotic locales, you do think of Morocco. You do think of Turkey. Like, I'm amazed they didn't have like a night sequence in Hong Kong.
I agree.
All the buildings in the background.
The night Hong Kong scene,
right? Like that is the cliched nighttime sequence, is like Hong Kong or Macau with all the neon and with all the big, beautiful buildings. That would have fit perfectly in this movie.
I always think of Guy Ritchie though I think of him as like dialogue and characters.
Totally.
I felt for this movie, I felt like, is this even a Guy Ritchie movie anymore? I felt like he was emulating something or chasing something. Like there was no, like usually his plots are so small, and it's the details and the dialogue and the characters that make it a movie. You're like, how did he even write a movie about such a limited event? And this one I felt was the opposite, where it's just empty calories. And if not for Aubrey Plaza, who I thought was the only redeeming character in there.
I have complicated thoughts about her with this, but
let's hear it.
Let me commend you, because sometimes it feels like you are sharing my brain. Honestly, like the notes you make are exactly the same as the notes I make, and it's great.
Well, it is a joint podcast.
That is true. So before we break that down, maybe we should just give a quick recap of what the plot of the movie is.
Can you tell me what the plot is? Because I'm pretty lost about this plot, I have to say.
Well, let's work it out together. We'll workshop it. And it goes without saying, spoiler alert,
Maybe. We'll see if we can even put it together. There may not be a spoiler if we can't.
Touché. The idea was that Jason Statham works as like an outsourced agent for the British government.
Let's stop right there. I got something was stolen from apparently the British government.
Correct.
And the British government said, hey, we've got 2 independent groups that we often outsource these investigations or things down to because the police 100%. Or MI5 or whoever is like too slow. 2 different groups. So we're going to give them each the job and let them compete to see who can get the job done faster. One group is the Jason Statham group, and the other is like their arch nemesis competitor group, right?
Yep.
Am I getting that right?
I'm with you 100%. For the sake of our North American audiences, it would be as if the CIA and the FBI both are aware that something got stolen from the US government.
Yep.
And they each send a team of operatives to recover it. And it's a competitive thing in a comedic way.
Yeah. One is Jason Bourne and his team, and one is Ethan Hunt and his team, right?
Correct. That's almost exactly right. Yes.
Right. And say, hey, whoever can track down this crime, we'll give a big reward to.
Or more importantly, our agency is going to come out looking like the best in the government. And it's a competition.
Right.
And that's probably true.
I kind of felt like this whole thing, though, fell a little bit flat, right?
I think that's the reason it fell flat is I think they were trying to make it comedic, this competition aspect.
Yeah.
But the problem was to make it really comedic, generally speaking, what makes it work is if one side is super inept and one side is super good.
Yes.
I'm thinking Johnny English, right? Which is the parody. So if Jason Statham's team was 100% inept, and if the other guys were like these super suave secret agents, this would have been like Melissa McCarthy in Spy, where Jason Statham comes off like he is the super good guy, but actually is inept. And she's the inept guy that's actually good. I think that would have been a much more funny thing.
You know, that's kind of funny. If it would have been like Jason Statham versus Aubrey Plaza, that would have been a good...
Exactly. You know? The only reason the team that's winning is winning by luck and by circumstance, not because they're actually skilled or vice versa. I think that would have made this thing not just more comedic, but a little bit more compelling and fun to watch.
Yeah. I didn't get anything out of the competition at all.
No, because it just seemed like they were there as obstacles and they were the ones who were inept effectively, right? Because that first sequence in the airport when they're intercepting the old man in the briefcase, Jason Statham's team is on it, except for the people who got tased. I mean, they were switched on.
Yeah.
I totally get it with what you're saying. And you're absolutely right, is that it just seemed a little off because both of them were competent.
And almost a little bit, can I say too competent? Like there's a little bit too much Mission Impossible in it. Like everyone's able to block phone calls and tap into their computer system and bypass this thing. And
pays the person in a public food court.
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed all a little bit like too super spy. Like they're so good at technology and they can just do anything. I felt like that was... I don't know, like that just didn't seem like a Guy Ritchie movie. You know, if you want to have that, that's a Mission Impossible movie where you've got like the expert team. It didn't come off really well for me here. So that's the setup of the plot.
The setup of the plot is there's a MacGuffin that's been stolen and two competing teams from the British government / American government, because they're obviously all working together, are trying to recover this thing before a black market salesperson, which in this case is Hugh Grant, is able to successfully broker the sales of this MacGuffin from the guys who stole it, which in this case was the Ukrainian group, to the guys who want to buy it, which we don't know about. And the whole point was the mission changes to say, it's not enough that you recover it. We need you to find out who's buying it and why. This is where it got a little weird. The government doesn't even know what was stolen from them. They know something was stolen, but they weren't sure what it was and how it could be used. I wasn't a fan of that. I thought it would have been better if they said that's on a need-to-know basis. I think that would have been more fun. And I think that would have also made the obvious turn at the end of the movie a lot more interesting.
Yeah, haven't we all been through it before? Like, oh, this one device that can take over the world, destroy the world, disrupt the financial system, whatever, right? Has been stolen and we got to stop it from falling into the wrong hands. It's kind of.
And the guy that's hired to do it, who's obviously the bad guy, eventually turns on the government. It's, again, a very cliched thing. And I think anyone who's into this genre of movie would have seen that coming a mile away. Like, I think I saw that coming from the get-go. The guy competing with Jason Statham was obviously going to be the bad guy at the end of the movie, or the henchman of the bad guy.
I have to say, I really lost a little bit of, there's some movies like I'm really on the edge of my seat, like following and picking it up. This movie somehow just did not engage me. I felt like it was so unusual for a Guy Ritchie film where there was more than usual action that I recall, and all the drama, or I should say like all the plot or the context was just like a one line to explain like the transition to kind of the next scene or the next thing,
Absolutely.
There was nothing. I don't know if you had like a bad day or if a lot was like edited or cut or what the issue is, but it really did not seem to me at all as though I was watching a Guy Ritchie movie.
You know what? Screw it. Forget about the plot synopsis. Let's talk about this. I think because it's a really important thing you're saying.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. Guy Ritchie's, let's say, bread and butter were these small stakes movies set predominantly in London, not even in England, in London.
Right. Yeah.
And it was small scale to the point where one movie was about the theft of weed and a bunch of rare guns in London.
Yeah.
One was about like a jewelry heist. It's like these small things where you're basically just talking about.
It's neighborhood. Yeah. It's like local neighborhood stuff.
It's the kind of crime Spider-Man would stop because he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Right.
It's not the kind of thing you would need to call the Avengers to do. This is the kind of thing that the Avengers would need to come on with.
Yeah. This is very Mission Impossible. I really got a lot of Mission Impossible vibes from this, but like a poorly done kind of Mission Impossible.
And I would argue exactly that, in that if you want to do Mission Impossible, do Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
And if you want to make it seem more Guy Ritchie. So I think the Mission Impossible-esque movie that Guy Ritchie did that was in this vein but done much better was The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
I think that felt like a global plot. That felt like a great espionage spy movie. And I think that also had the elements of a Guy Ritchie movie in terms of the humor. And it felt like a Guy Ritchie movie. It was snappy conversation. It was snappy dialogue. Like, it had a much bigger scale than The Gentleman, right? Which was the most recent movie that felt like it, or Rock and Rolla, or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, or Snatch. This movie, I think, tried to be like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but didn't pull it off.
So also, one of the things you say, which is right, is, if you look at Jason Statham's character, he's supposed to be really the lead in this, right?
Yeah.
So if this is going to be a big Mission Impossible type movie, he should be Tom Cruise, who's got it all under control. Whenever things are bad, he takes care of it, right? He's the line of last defense. He's the best. He can manage it. In this movie, though, his character was like the local character, all these kind of quirky issues. Like, how many times did they reference
the wine?
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's not funny. It doesn't make sense in the context.
It added no flavor.
Yeah, it would have been funny if he was like a local, like central London kind of small time thug, but he had like this taste for like expensive wine, Like that would have been, the juxtaposition would have been maybe a little bit funny in that context, where like all his buddies are drinking beer and like whiskey or something, and he likes wine. Okay, that's funny. But like in this context, like, I don't know how many times they said it, like he's got this huge expense account and he's accustomed to a certain lifestyle and he needs all this vacation time off. Like it wasn't funny. And it just came off as wrong to me. It made him seem like this quirky, weird, non-Statham prima donna type person.
And it could have worked Again, as you rightly said, if they tweaked his character a little bit to make it more comedic. His character tried to be like James Bond, living a lavish lifestyle, living all of these things. But if that's the case, then I got really annoyed by all the nickel and diming talk. Oh,
I agree.
You can't spend $1.5 million on this. We don't have the budget for this. We blew your budget on your wine thing alone. Like, come on.
Yeah, why are we even talking about budget?
This is a movie. This isn't an audit set. I'm not here to do an internal audit on this.
You're right.
On the spy thriller.
You're right. But at the same time, like the whole thing was weird, you know, like, oh, we've already, I agree. You said it right, but it was just a theme that played out repeatedly. And I thought it didn't add anything.
And no payoff in that's the sense.
No payoff.
And no comedic payoff, because if you said it once offhandedly, or like at the end of the day, like at the very end of the movie, Cary Elwes' character gets a call from his boss at MI6, and he's like, you're over your budget by, I'm making up a number. He doesn't even need to say a number, but you just see him on the other end. He goes, he bought what? And you see him drive off in like a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Something out of place. That would have been a funny way of saying, okay, this guy is going overboard. And that's it. End of story. He didn't need to go further.
It would have been more funny if the Josh Hartnett character, for example, who's allegedly like Hollywood royalty, would have had trouble fitting into the independent contractor lifestyle, you know, where he would have been expecting to fly first class and he's flying coach.
Good.
You know, he's expecting to like have like a chauffeured car and they put him like in the backseat of a small rental. He expects to have a new tux. And they give him like a t-shirt and like a jacket, a butler's jacket inside out or something, you know, and that would be funny. But like the Statham character, it didn't come off right at all. And I'm disappointed because he's such a likable actor. To saddle him with such bad baggage, I thought was really injustice.
All of these things were done to add a little bit of color and flavor to what would otherwise be a relatively bland character. But I don't think it came off as colorful. I think it just came off as annoying and irritating.
Super annoying and irritating.
Yeah, so that's how I felt about that characterization of Jason Statham character. Because there's nothing fundamentally wrong with Jason Statham as a character in this role. He is an able spy, which is good. But then this over-reliance and abundant talk about, you know, his financial excess, unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know, you can say it once and that's fine, but if you're going to make this a running theme, then make it a funny running theme.
Yeah, I agree.
And it didn't connect with me. Let's put it that way. Again, when you're watching a movie like James Bond, money never comes up unless we're talking about the ransom.
Totally right.
You never worry about how he's going to pay for that Aston Martin that he blew up in France that he wasn't supposed to have. That never comes up.
I agree. If you're going to be ostentatious, make it ostentatious. Like,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Don't saddle the audience with your financial luggage.
This is the one genre where you can do that because that is kind of expected of this lifestyle.
Yep, I agree.
So I'm totally fine with that. And I don't think you need to make a social commentary about it.
So what did you think of Aubrey Plaza? You said you weren't like, you didn't think it was her finest work?
So Aubrey Plaza, her role was that she was the hired gun, the newest member of the team.
Right.
The unknown factor. And Jason Statham is weary of her because he only likes to work with people he's worked with in the past, which is why he liked working with JJ.
Right.
Aubrey Plaza's character came off as very competent, but also like very quirky. One hand, she was quirky because she was like the quote unquote stereotypical American who talks a lot, who kind of is, you know, a little bit of jibber jabber, but she gets the work done. That's good. But then she was also like, you know, they made that joke that was in the trailer, which is like, oh, I can't wait for you to get in there, you know, sexually. And then they cut that off because I don't think that joke worked in the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
But because that's a typically Aubrey Plaza thing to do and say, I'm talking about her character from Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
It's appropriate to Aubrey Plaza as a human. It's less appropriate to Aubrey Plaza in this movie as a character.
I thought she was the only character, though, that added any levity to this, right? She's the only person that had any one-liners, that did anything kind of like endearingly quirky. You know, like she definitely had personality. If you would have surrounded her in a group of 4 with 3 other people like her, that would have been a very dynamic group. You know, Statham, they tried to do that with his excessive quirk, which we just talked about ad nauseum. Plaza, I thought was very good in this role. Or maybe let me say it like this: she was the standout of this film. I think that in a very, very great Guy Ritchie movie, her character would have been like above average, but not like wow. But I think in this role, just by the lack of interesting characters around her, I think that she was definitely the standout.
So for me, the standout was actually Hugh Grant's character.
Yeah, Grant's character was good.
I agree with you on the good guy side. She was let's say she was the shining star. But I think on the other side, it really was Hugh Grant. I mean, he was a scene stealer.
But he was. But are you also not? I agree. Tarantino likes to work with his dudes. Guy Ritchie likes to work with his dudes. But I also felt a little bit disappointed by, even though Grant was great, we've kind of seen him before do this, you know?
In The Gentleman, he was, I agree with you in one aspect, is he seemed like a slimy, oily, greasy guy, you know?
Yeah.
But in this movie, what I really liked about him, and I think it was really in the third act that he blossomed, is you see him as not just, you see him kind of as like this flirtatious, like warlord broker in the whole movie. But it's not until that last sequence where he blows up all the satellites, where you see he's actually a menacing guy.
Yeah.
And so menacing that even Josh Hartnett's character, who, by the way, I love, was just like, that was the sexiest and scariest thing I've ever seen. Yeah. And it really was. Like, I felt exactly the same way Josh Hartnett felt when he had that line. Yeah. When you broke those deals with the guy who works with Saddam Hussein, and with Gaddafi, you make sure he gets paid. And then he rains down missiles. I thought that was so sexy in terms of like the comedic guy who shows you what he's actually made of. Oh, I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. What about Hartnett was a nice addition, huh? We haven't seen him in stuff in a while.
So long. I'm just happy to see him on screen, to be honest. I've always liked him. I don't know what has happened in his personal life. I always enjoyed him on screens. It was nice to see him.
I thought he was good in this role.
He played a great spoof of that airheaded Hollywood star who's kind of up his own butt.
I thought he played it exactly the way that role should have been played.
Yeah.
You know, the right level of confidence and nervousness and a little bit of insecurity and overconfidence. Like, I thought he did it all in a good way. So why don't we love this movie?
So let's talk about why we love it. And then go
why do we love it?
So I like certain aspects of this movie. Even though it wasn't done well, I liked the idea of 2 competing spy groups working for the same master, chasing after the MacGuffin.
Yep. The race. I agree.
The normal cliche would be the good guys going after the MacGuffin and then the bad guys going after the MacGuffin. And of course, at the end of the day, we do learn that the second good guy group is also the bad guy group. That's fine. Right. But I like that because it allowed for some fun and interesting dynamics. So, for example, airport scene aside, that sequence on the yacht, I thought that was kind of funny, where you see Aubrey Plaza trying to buy time. Simultaneously, Jason Statham is duking it out with the other guy on that team. I thought that was fun. So I thought that gave it a good opportunity. I think it fell apart in the third act, but still, I thought that was fun.
There was an opportunity, though. I thought this was coming. It did not come. I thought there was going to be some backstabbing or double agent, you know, because like Aubrey used to be on Mike's team, and then Jason's old teammate went to Mike's team. I was kind of waiting for the setup that there was going to be some like double crossing. That didn't happen. So I'm not sure if I was expecting too much, if that was going to be too complicated to pull off.
I agree with you, but I think the reason they didn't do that is because I sneakingly suspect that they want to set this movie up to be a franchise in the future.
A franchise?
Yeah, I can totally see them making a sequel to this movie, or maybe multiple sequels where they work as a team together.
Oh, that's interesting.
But otherwise, I'm 100% with you, because they set it up. They set the groundwork up really well.
Yeah.
They poached one of ours, so we poached one of theirs.
Yeah. And then I would have expected, like, so for example, the guy who left John, right? John is actually the double agent.
Yeah.
And then they're expecting, Aubrey to be the double agent, but she's not. She's loyal and she's
exactly. And then it could have been JJ, who also was a double agent, and it became like just exactly. But something about this movie made me feel like they thought of this as a potential franchise.
Yeah.
If you think about the spy thriller franchises, right? You have Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
You had Jason Bourne, but you don't anymore. So right now, the live spy ones.
Yeah.
I think really only Mission Impossible.
Yeah, the Fast series doesn't really count anymore.
Fast series doesn't really count. Unfortunately, because of Armie Hammer, Man from U.N.C.L.E. won't be continuing.
Yeah.
So
Ezra Miller of that franchise. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And frankly speaking, I would have loved to have seen multiple Man from U.N.C.L.E. movies. I thought they did a really good job with that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that worked for me. What didn't work for me is that, and I think we touched upon this really, was that it didn't feel like a Guy Ritchie movie.
Yeah.
Some of the dialogue wasn't super tight. You could see that they had elements in it. So you remember in that sequence where he breaks into the house to steal from the Ukrainian guy and uses the gas canister?
Yeah.
And you see quick cuts and the camera cutting left to right and so forth.
Yeah.
That felt very Guy Ritchie.
Yeah. The music. Remember, he's in the bedroom and like that's a very Guy Ritchie scene.
Very Guy Ritchie to do that. But the dialogue did not match.
I think Jason Statham has to wear like a black beanie as like a it's like a cat burglar in almost every movie he's in, right?
That's a part of his contract.
No one wears a knit beanie like he does.
Yeah. And a black turtleneck.
Are you surprised there's not a movie with just Statham and The Rock?
Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, but Hobbs and Shaw. But are you surprised there's not another one? Because like what he did with Kevin Hart, right? They play off each other so well just because of size and their personalities. Yeah. That would be another one if they do like another Hobbs and Shaw, right? Like I could see them both kind of wearing like black beanies. And
fundamentally, I think that's exactly what they wanted to do at Universal.
Yeah.
Is create within the Fast and Furious universe to create another spin-off. But I think Vin Diesel fudged it all up because he owns the franchise.
He does own the franchise?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he has final say. And I think he fudged things up so badly for them. And by them, I mean The Rock.
Why'd they fall out? Why did Vin and Rock fall out?
Lots of rumors, but presumably it's because Vin Diesel has a really terrible work ethic. Like constantly late, is a bit of a prima donna on set and things like that. And The Rock is famously one of those like alpha types who's like always a go-getter on set.
Yeah, I can see that rubbing both of them the wrong way.
Yeah, this movie had a lot of potential. In fact, it was one of the movies that I had really high.
I was super excited for a long time to see it. And I kept feeling like I was missing out on something, but I watched it and I was even just from the start, it seemed, this is not the right way to describe it, but you'll know what I mean when I say it. From the opening scene, it just seemed so small. Like the stakes just seemed like sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, whoa, this is epic. Like everything is bigger and more intense than I expected. I felt like just from the opening scene, like it was just such a weird dialogue. Like, hey, something's stolen. We don't know what it is. We want you to get it. And who's going to be on your team? This guy? Oh, that guy's crazy. What about this guy? No, that guy's so bad. And what about this guy? No, he's so expensive. I just felt like from the beginning, it seemed like this really small, kind of quirky, weird British thing. Even though like I felt like it was set up for this big mission, but I just felt like they were really like stooping their shoulders and acting a lot smaller than it deserved.
It also felt super slow for an action movie. And by slow, I mean, it felt like it took time for me to get hooked into the plot.
Can I say something about the action? Action's a tough thing to do. Like you've either got to like go hard all the way or it shouldn't be your genre. And I felt like, Michael Bay knows how to do action, right? I mean, famously, yeah. I felt like this was kind of like they had a big action budget, but like, remember the scene where they like transferred the money? It was just kind of like in this weird, random rock place.
Yeah.
Wasn't even like a quarry.
Like
it was
a
weird.
cliffside almost. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the helicopters came in. They had a few Mercedes kind of like doing donuts all over the place. Then you saw like this big machine gun just kind of like shooting out rounds, which is kind of like a Michael Bay thing. You see all the casings.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was like, no one was really shot. They saw like all these kind of like explosives on the ground, but they missed everybody. A few people just kind of like dove in the air like they were.
Statham drove like 30 meters and stopped.
It just seemed like so small. Like, this is your big scene. Like, there was nothing. Like, Michael Bay knows how to like use a machine gun, and you see like close-ups of all the casings falling. There's no music. You just hear like ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. You
and
see
he would have
bullets
used
like
a drone to go through the helicopter. He would have done.
like,
you're right. Michael Bay would have done. And this is not,
and it's not a budget issue. It's just it just didn't seem like that's their big scene.
That was the action sequence that ended the second act.
And I was just kind of like yawn, like.
And the same goes, by the way, for the final sequence when they're, when he's getting sniper support from Aubrey Plaza and so forth.
Yeah.
The same exact thing.
Yeah.
It felt sterile.
Yeah.
At no point was I ever worried about Jason Statham because it felt like he knew exactly what was around the corner, unfairly so.
Yeah, you should have like, if that's your scene, you should have like close-ups of like someone so still, like hiding in the woods. You see like a bead of sweat coming down their forehead and drop. You see like their finger camouflaged on the trigger. That there's a way to film it. It doesn't cost any more money, but it creates the sense of drama and tension. And I felt like this was just kind of like the 30,000-foot view where you're like, sniper in place, aiming, taking them out. There's no like classic walkie-talkie like
that last fight scene between Mike and Jason Statham's character.
Nothing.
I mean, it was done in a second. No, I mean, he punched him.
And he just like with a suitcase. I mean, it was just kind of like.
Yeah, it just felt. I mean, bloody hell! You're on a tower. Throw him out the window. At the very least, you could have done was throw him out the window. He didn't even do that.
I mean, I wanted to see like a little bit of make it a little bit competitive. Like they should have been. If this is Michael Bay, it's raining. There's like a live electrical wire kind of in the water. Like the ceiling's about to come down. Everyone's like shouting, you got to get out. The building is going to blow. Like you see them throwing punches and like this was just like dry inside, AC on, temperature controlled. Hit him with the suitcase in the nose. He reaches down for his gun. Hit him with the suitcase a second time. Like, no big deal. Like these two should be like Statham. Okay, we agreed. Like he's considered a very good fighter. That's part of his MO in movies, but you also want to see him like
fight with someone capable, right?
Yeah.
Equally competitive. It could have used a little bit of Michael B. Jordan in Creed 3.
Yeah.
A good sense of earned victory at the end. And this didn't feel earned. It felt like a walk in the park.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think it was just missing a little bit of, and again, I think that comes down to the fact that this isn't really Guy Ritchie's wheelhouse.
No, it's not. He's a fish and chips corner pub.
The most action that I saw that made sense that way was like when Robert Downey Jr. plays in the Sherlock movies. Then you see the slow motion and you can see him work out the different permutations and combinations of his fights and the punches. And then he's able to knock him down in 2 seconds. That makes sense to me. I thought that was wonderfully done. Or if you look at Henry Cavill versus Armie Hammer in the bathroom in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and they're beating the living shit out of each other. Yeah. And like that felt like, oh my God.
The porcelain sinks. Yeah. Like
things are breaking and you feel that felt like a proper fight. This, I don't know what the budget of the movie was, but I feel like
that's your scene. That's your scene right there, right? Jason Statham like has all these bottles of expensive wine and he's got to like smash the bottles of wine on the guy's head. And, like then Aubrey comes in and she's like, oh man, like that must have been so painful for you to, get rid of that whole case of wine, smashing it or something. Like you could have done so many other like tropes with it. it's really
he's got a bar full of wine, and he's literally trying to figure out which is the cheapest bottle to hit him with because he doesn't want to waste it.
That's funny. That's funny.
Aubrey's passing him bottles of wine.
But not that
and he's
one.
Like, not that one. That's too expensive. No, that one. That's a vintage. Yeah,
that
perfect.
82?
That just came out last year.
That's where that 82 is. Yeah, like there's so many better ways to either make that a funny scene or make it, that scene where like it's really dramatic. Like you said, earned victory and dramatic.
Yeah.
That was poor.
Yeah, that's the thing. This felt half Guy Ritchie, half generic action spy thriller. You know what I was kind of hoping for when I saw the trailer? A little bit of the Gray Man mixed in with Guy Ritchie, where we see all these exotic locales. We see a really proper like spy thriller, but with good sense of tight dialogue, good humor, kind of like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but in modern day. I think that would have been great.
I was expecting it was a little bit more of a heist, like one of those just classic kind of heist movies.
Ocean's 11 style. I think that would have been great.
What was the heist movie where it took place like at a NASCAR track, and it was Magic Mike, and it was also the James Bond dude?
Yeah, where they use a vacuum cleaner to suck up all the cash.
Yes, and what was this movie? But you know what movie I'm talking about, right?
I do.
You say it with like venom. You're like, I do.
Logan Lucky.
Right. I thought this was going to be more like Logan Lucky, where it's a little bit of a kind of a heist, a few kind of criminals, shady people, like some good punch outs and stuff. But it's kind of still local, right? Logan Lucky is great because Logan Lucky, they're not flying to 5 different countries just for the sake of having one kind of scene. It all takes place in a bar. It takes place, in the bowels of a stadium. It takes place in cars and blah, blah, blah.
Super cheap location budget.
Right. But it was the relationship of the characters. It was how tightly scripted that heist was. It was the ending where it's like they're still kind of living below their means to avoid, drawing attention or suspicion. It was all these things. That's a Guy Ritchie movie, I think. And that's kind of what I was expecting here.
You're right. Something low stakes. And having said that, I think that the reason we are thinking all of this is primarily because those are the movies that Guy Ritchie is most famously known for.
Yes.
I think Guy Ritchie has done a lot of different styles of movies, right? I think he did Aladdin. He did all these movies that weren't the stereotypical Guy Ritchie formula. Mm-hmm. So Man from U.N.C.L.E. was the one. Then he did King Arthur. He did Aladdin. Yep. He did Wrath of Man. Mm-hmm. These are all movies that are slightly outside of the Guy Ritchie wheelhouse.
Because they're outside of London.
And not just that. It's not just that they're outside of London, but I think these are also the movies that I least like of his. But in general, right? For me, I still think his best movie by and far was Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Rock and Rolla. Yeah.
Rock and Rolla, also very good. Snatch, very good. All these movies I thought were excellent. Yeah. I liked The Gentleman for that same reason. It was also small scale. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit of a rehashing of a few of his other normal plot lines, but I still liked it.
So should we give this a rating?
I went in expecting it to be a must-watch in cinema wherever you can watch it in cinema, but I think at best this is a wait for streaming.
I had the same expectation. I thought this was going to be a must watch in cinema, and it is, I hesitate to say, it is a skip. There's no reason to see this movie. I wish it weren't the case, but there we are.
I understand where you're coming from. I would still think that it's fine to have on in the background when you're watching it inevitably on Netflix or whoever acquires it. But I agree with you. It's not the movie we were hoping for.
Yeah. How is it performed like worldwide?
At the moment, it's still not a global release everywhere. I think it's only made like $25 million. Jeez. And I think that was also just the circumstances of the release being all mucked up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Have you and I ever seen such a small movie? I mean that with extreme sincerity. Have you and I ever gone to a cinema to see a movie that's made less than this?
Emily the Criminal, maybe?
I didn't see that in a cinema, did you?
Yeah. It could also be, by the way, I mean, it's not a fair comparison. That was really almost like an indie film.
Yeah.
It's a tough call, man. It's a really tough call.
All right. I mean, if they make a sequel, I will see the sequel, but I hope they listen to this podcast first and take to heart a few of our suggestions. They may need to recast some people as well.
Say what you will. I loved him in Princess Bride. I've loved him in Robin Hood Men in Tights, but I think Carrie-L could have been a pass.
Yeah. I mean, again, that character doesn't really give him a lot of material to work with, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're either the Charlie of Charlie's Angels, where you manipulate everything, but Aubrey Plaza kind of took that role, right? Where she's always, so he doesn't have that. He's always bitching about the budget, which is, you pointed out,
auditor for them.
Yeah.
And nobody likes him being internally audited.
So I don't think he got a whole lot to work with, but yeah, in that role, like nothing. And again, even the way they dressed him in all like these tweeds, he was kind of supposed to be like
the cliched British guy. That's the thing, right? Like, but everyone was wearing tweed. All the British suits, they weren't wearing tailored nice suits. They were all wearing not bad suits, but they looked like they were ready to go out for a hunt from their lodge at the end of the weekend. They were in
the 70s.
They didn't look like they worked for MI6 in London.
I agree. And JJ, they don't give him any material. I can't even think of anything he said. He wasn't on the yacht scene. They had him in the car in Turkey, where all he was doing was turn left. No, you're 10 feet away. Turn right. Like, first of all, I mean, come on, man. One, you cannot drive and give directions at the same time. Not only is that dangerous, you just can't concentrate. Two, if you've ever been in Turkey, there's no way that you're actually driving while doing that. You're stuck in traffic. But anyway, that's not a scene, right? Just to say like, okay, what's my line? Turn left. Oh, you should see him now. He's 1 block away. Like, that's just a waste of his talent, to be honest, you know?
I agree.
Like, if you're not going to use him, don't have him in the film. But I thought there was nothing that they really gave him to do. He wasn't in the house scene. He didn't break in anywhere. Like, he was just like an extra.
There were elements where it just felt like they wanted to make Jason Statham the inept spy who gets things done, but is still inept. Have you seen that TV series, the animated show called Archer?
I have not. I mean, I've seen of it, but I've never watched it.
Archer is like this super agent who's able to do anything and everything, but he is like the most socially awkward and inept guy ever. So he's very capable, but he's a social idiot. And so there were moments where you see him do that. Like, we know when he escapes the house, he's like, I thought you said the front. He's like, well, normally we don't keep an Olympic-sized pool in the front yard.
Right.
And then he realizes that he was the one who messed up.
Correct.
That had great potential to be humorous if they kept that personality throughout the entire movie.
That's right. You're right. You got to go with that personality one way or the other, right? All right. What do we have coming up next?
We have next week, Shazam comes out. Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Next week?
Yeah, on Friday at the time of this recording.
Wow, that escalated fast. We have to see that and do an episode about it.
We are. In fact, we are going to be joined by our friends at the Undercast Company.
Oh, good times.
We're going to have a roundtable discussion and review on Shazam 2.
Okay. So we've got to see it Friday night then, right?
We do.
Did you book your ticket yet?
No, because I'm not worried about availability.
Oh, really?
I'm not worried. I don't think it's going to be I think it's going to be a win for them considering the fact the budget is very low, but I don't think it's going to be a massive win for them overall.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see that Friday night. And Saturday, we'll do our roundtable and discuss Shazam 2.
As Ethan and I have not slated, but we've given you our thoughts and criticisms of Guy Ritchie's latest cinematic endeavor. If you agree with us or disagree with us, do let us know. What did you like? What didn't you like? Reach out to us on Twitter at F&S Podcast or DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. Or if you want, email us aloha at filmsandstuffpodcast.com or leave a message at the bottom of this video.
Oh, that would be cool. We love messages. All right, Pete.
Thank you, Ethan.
We'll catch you guys next weekend when we do our review of Shazam 2.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, all. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.